Okay. So hi, I thank you, Adam, Elena, and Miranda for inviting me for this event. I moved from New York to California kind of suddenly last year, right in the middle of the pandemic. And one of the things I've been trying to do is build and find my community of practice. And the chapters have been so useful, and it's been so nice to meet people through that. So I feel really good to be a part of this thriving community. um, I am sort of a hybrid practitioner. I'm a designer and a researcher, and also an archivist with the Calendar Collective. So today I'm going to be sharing some of the work, recent work and experiments we've been doing at the Calendar Collective that explore how futures and system design might be interlinked. Calendar Collective is an ongoing investigation. We collect, catalog, and publish calendars that are real and imagined. Our source of research material is openly contributed voicemails. And today I will be sharing a set of 9 calendars that we've traced through these unwritten clues. So each calendar each calendar has a voice note and a voicemail and a note. So if you don't hear the audio, someone please unmute yourself and tell me that. So here, the night is variable. It fluctuates with the phases of the moon. Some nights are short, while others long.
Hello. 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 Is this Lakeside Resort? I'm calling to dispute a charge. My name is John Packles, and I stayed in your hotel for a night. Let's see, on the 12th, and I think in room 412. It was a no moon night, so it should have been a baseline charge. It was hardly a few hours, but you seem to have charged me for a waxing crescent. Can you double check and get back to me as soon as possible? Thanks.
Here, the length of the day is attuned to the sunlight. The day is as large as the sunlight one gets.
Hi, this message is for Ashima Smith. This is Mark from Bright Homes Brokers. I showed you a few houses last week. You said you want a place with at least 2,400 souls per annum. Usually these places are really hard to find, especially in a city like New York, unless you increase your budget for a penthouse. But I found a great place with 24,000 souls per annum that should give you roughly 6.5 souls each day. That's a lot for this location and price. It's a rare find, so let me know soon. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye.
Here, a day is 24 hours long, but some hours are more colorful than others.
Hey, are you there yet? I just left. I'm so sorry. Right now, it's red lilac purple with a hint of skimmed milk white.
Sorry, minor glitch. Here, time blooms and withers with opening and closing of flowers.
Hey Milo, do you know any chronobiologists in the area? Ava is starting her night shift, and we don't really have anything for that time. And, we just moved here, so we're not really familiar with the local bloomers. Plus, I hardly have a green thumb, so just want something we can tend to. And I don't mind paying for a house call. So, anyway, just text me if you know an expert. Okay, bye.
Here, time is aligned on the first day of the week. Then it begins to drift away in no fixed order or direction until the start of the next week when it is aligned again.
Hello, my name's Sukanya. This is the 5th time I'm calling you and I still have not received any response. My ISP code is 243179. Again, it's 243179. My time still isn't drifting. In fact, it's moving quite precisely. So right now I'm just avoiding looking at it. I mean, it's just silly. It's just silly if I always know the time. So could you please send in someone to fix it during the next sync? Thank you.
Here, every year is the same, with 13 months of 28 days each. Every date is fixed to the same weekday. So the 17th is always a Tuesday.
Hello, this is Mira from Calendar Care Shop. The heirloom calendar you had given us is now fully restored. It took us a while because this piece was exceptionally old and fragile, but we have managed to mend it, so it's ready for pickup.
Here, one is either an even or an odd. Evens are born on even days, they work on even days and rest on odd days. Odds do the opposite, but evens get an additional holiday at the year end.
Hi Mukta, I'm calling to ask you for a favor. Do you know any even home care nurses? My mom is going to be living with us and I need someone to take care of her. I found a nice odd nurse, but for some reason I've been finding it really hard to find an even nurse, and it's a little urgent. I really need help, so let me know if you have any leads.
Here, a year only has weeks, each week with 10 days. Every day lasts for 10 hours with 100 minutes in an hour and 100 seconds in a minute.
Oh my god, I just heard. Was she really born at 10 past 100? And on the 10th as well? What a lucky baby. Congratulations. I can't wait to meet the little one. And until then, take care of you.
Here, every month looks different, an arbitrary arrangement of 5 types of days. One such day is a personal day of pause.
Hello, Oliver Sharma. This is an automated message update from All Rounds Company. We have carefully reviewed your application, and while your background is impressive, unfortunately we've decided to move ahead with someone whose pause day is more aligned to our business needs. We appreciate your time, and should you consider changing your current day of pause, we would be happy to reopen the position for you. Good luck with your search. Thank you.
So we're open most days about midday, seldom as early as the daybreak, some days as late as dusk. We close about when the sun goes down or twilight, and occasionally at midnight, but sometimes even beyond midnight. Some days we're not here at all, but lately we're here most of the time, except when we're somewhere else. So if you have a unique experience of time that you would like to share, please send us a voicemail at 646-371-5045. Next part of the presentation is focused more on our methods in making and how we approach our work. As an archivist myself, I get really excited with objects, especially small, ordinary domestic objects like calendars. This is a Hindu calendar and almanac, something that I grew up looking at in my house. And when you do a close reading of these objects, especially something like a calendar, you realize it has all of these signals embedded in the object. And you can almost read or write an object in a specific way. In fact, every clock tells a story, every clock takes a position in debate about time, and every clock is an attempt to shape how people think about time. And I think this holds true for all timekeeping devices, calendars included. But when we look at our modern digital calendars, they're all telling the same stories. They all frame time expressions through smart scheduling, organizing, planning, quick syncing, progress tracking, or to-do lists. And in doing so, they continue promoting this dominant narrative that time is limited or time is linear, and cement the logic of productivity to a large degree. And it makes tangible this notion that time is money, and we can invest it, we can lose it, we can gain it, and worst of all, waste it. All of this is to say that tools are not neutral, and they're not just mere depictions of time, but they're actually products of a bias system. And systems system foster or support certain values, and because these tools are so quotidian, or they're part of our everyday lives, and they're so deeply embedded in our routines, that actually separating values from the tools themselves or the system itself becomes really difficult. And in this way, they perpetuate and reinforce the same system that actually created them. And how that happens is often through representation. After all, how we represent time affects how we conceptualize time. So a calendar is a physical manifestation of a cognitive model of time. So under or beneath its representation lie more complex astronomical or mathematical calendrical systems that exist because of a certain value. So changing anything about the system or a tool is really difficult without changing the inherent value that is at the core of the system. And that begs the question that what if instead of supporting values of efficiency and productivity, if our tools could support values beyond that, what if it could support values of time that is precise as well as ambiguous, objective as well as subjective, universal as well as plural. And value fiction is a great way of doing that, which is you take a value and then you build like design fiction around it. And it's often more powerful because values inspire. I think when we change the value, our systems and tools become more permeable and more conducive to change. This has happened before, so it's not the first time. So this is the International Fixed Calendar, which has 13 months. Each month is 28 days long, and it's fixed. So George Eastman, head of Kodak at the time, was so impressed by this hyper symmetric calendar because it meant that all your quarters are the same. They're not moving because of this month of February, that he actually adapted it between 1928 to 1989 as the internal Kodak calendar, while the rest of the world followed Gregorian calendar. This is the Soviet calendar that the government had employed from 1929 to 1940. And what drove this change was productivity, because the government wanted to make sure that the production is always on. The workforce was divided into groups of 5 people. Each person was assigned a color, like you see yellow, orange, red. And the day that color appears on the calendar is your holiday. While it did increase productivity to almost 80%, it completely disrupted social systems because family and friends wouldn't have the same holiday. Machines were never maintained, and workforce in general was demoralized. So you see how one value actually generated this entire system of organizing time and then tools that support that system. This is a French revolutionary calendar, also called the French decimal calendar, which was used by the government between 1793 to 1805. And again, it was less of a practical change, but more of a symbolic change, indicating that we are moving away from irregularity and irrationality of a religious calendar to a more scientific calendar, which is based on a metric system. And they had watches and clocks that had 10 hours on their face. And all of these seem kind of unreal at this point. And in the same way, the sun calendar that we had, and in some multiple workshops we had conducted, it was indicative of the fact that while our current calendars are these neatly stacked rows and squares, this is really awkward because it responds to the changing sunlight. But in doing so, it also makes the viewer acutely aware of the amount of sunlight or their access to sunlight. So participants were able to reflect on their own access to sunlight in a city like New York and what it means for the city landscape if that were to hold true. The even-odd calendar, though considered quite divisive, it also demanded cooperation. And it indicates the sort of asymmetric relationship we have to access of time. So between a night shifter and a day worker, they don't have equal access to time the way we would assume, or the way our system assumes that time is equal and objective and neutral. Someone in the care industry also does not have the same access. The drift calendar made participants reflect on still wanting to be connected to the community while preserving their own sense of time, and how that sometimes is at odds with each other. So all of these seem a little absurd, but they're not unreal. They're just at odds with our popular worldview. And as a system, time is malleable. Clocks and calendars are just conventions, and they can therefore be, and they're objects that we've designed. We've made some choices, so they can therefore be redesigned. And alternate temporal thought is not a novel thought. It's other cultures and other people have organized their lives around alternate temporal thought, and we can take inspiration from that. So we did multiple workshops before and during the pandemic, and the most striking thing about these workshops was when we would initially present these calendars, participants really struggle with this idea of these alternate calendars and how would they exist and what would they do. But post-pandemic, when sort of known markers of time had already become illegible, and these systems had become a lot more permeable, and our known systems of organizing time had broken down, participants were a lot more receptive to these ideas, and it made calendars feel a lot more plausible. So we know strange things are happening with time, but we also hope stranger things can happen still. This project was a group effort. I had a lot of help along the way. So thank you for all the people who were part of this project. And if you would like to know more about the project, please visit the website or leave us a voicemail. Thank you. And I can take questions now and see everyone's faces.
Thank you so much for that. That was awesome. You can see all the reactions now. We can see them twice. That's fun.
Yeah, to my computer. Well, this one.
Let's see if there are any questions in the chat. And also, Sophia, J. Paul, Ileana, Miranda, if y'all wanted to ask anything, feel free. Kalyani, if there's anything else you wanted to share beyond the MISM presentation you just shared with us, feel free.
Yeah, J. Paul mentioned Ted Hunt, and I actually spoke to him after this project because he works a lot with time as well, and some of his recent work with the app, I think, is taking it from a speculative space and making it more accessible. So I love the stuff he's doing.
I had a question. I was kind of curious. In all these explorations, have you found a direction that you're personally excited about? I mean, is there anything that you've kind of touched on that said, wow, I think we should move in this direction, or any adjustments you've made to your own sense of time, or your own ways that you handle calendars or things? I
mean, I think that,
or anything you avoid?
Yeah, I think it's obviously very hard because the systems that we have right now are so pervasive. So it's hard to actually fight it in any sense. But I haven't actually picked one. And I think the whole idea for the project was that it's impossible to pick one, and that we need these different expressions of time, and that maybe a community can choose one over other, but that choice doesn't really exist anymore. And because that thought of linear time is so ingrained in our head that we're unable to think otherwise.
And then Kalyani, someone, Aman had asked in the Q&A along similar lines to J. Paul, wondering whether you have any thoughts on how the pandemic may have shifted our perceptions of time, and if that influenced your process at all.
Oh yeah, hi Aman. It did. I think personally, I was stuck without my material and without a lot of tools that I'm used to. Sorry, that's my alarm for 20 minutes. Without the tools that I was used to. So that's where the whole idea of voicemail actually came about, because voicemails are an interesting medium because you are sending a voicemail to someone else in the present, knowing it would be heard by someone in the future. So in its medium itself, it's not really, it's this misaligned temporal spaces that I was interested in. I think that there were lots of examples that happened in the pandemic, like grocery shopping according to your first name and last name, or you can, like, staggered work hours. You can only go during morning and someone else is going to go in the evening. So all of these made people really open to change, that it doesn't have to be a 7-day week or a 5-day work week, sort of. Yeah.
That would be nice if we stopped operating under such industrial standards in the new knowledge economy. A couple more questions for you. Calvin had asked, he knows of a research opportunity you may be interested in. If people are interested in connecting with you, Kalyani, how would you prefer to be reached out to?
Yeah, I'll drop in my email and my LinkedIn. Should have had that on my slide. Yeah.
And then did you see there's another question from Pooja? She's curious how this project changed your view of time in your day-to-day life.
That's interesting. I think that one is you really start seeing the science embedded in these objects. So, for example, when you work and you have like a Google Calendar, you put in what you're going to do for the day, but that's shared across the org or across the company, and usually you don't really have access to your employer's calendar. So I think that's sort of how these objects are used as tools of control is also, and being aware of that it made me more aware of the fact that my calendar would be open to my employer to look at, but their calendar may not be open to me to look at or make changes to. So this access to time is not equal, and it's different.
I guess I'll ask a question because I'm curious. The collective that you've built up, how do y'all prefer to communicate? Do you communicate synchronously, or do y'all like to communicate on Slack and leave each other messages and get back to it?
Oh, sorry, I missed one bit.
Oh. I'm curious, like the collective that you've started to work on this project, how do y'all prefer to communicate? Do you like to communicate synchronously or asynchronously?
So this was the right question, but this is a fictitious collective in that sense, that it doesn't exist. But throughout the project, I obviously interacted with a lot of people, and there were workshops, and that's how this came about. But I wanted to make something that kind of feels real, but is also not real, because a lot of these calendars exist in that in-between space that you can see it happening, but you're not really sure how life would be organized around that calendar.
And I don't know if you want to mention too, because we kind of talked about this a little bit before, but how your presentation was a bit of a performance, and how you wanted to present it as a bit of a performance.
Yeah. So some of the workshops I did were also similar, which was I presented myself as the archivist, and there's this very real thing that is the Calendar Collective, and I'm inviting the participants to be actually the collective members. I found this really interesting piece of information in my research that in 1950, I think almost 8 years after independence, India had almost 30 different calendars. So there was a calendar reform committee set by the government, and the job of the committee was to actually make one Indian civil calendar. These 30 calendars also existed because there were some scientific discrepancies or different, but there were also like different ways of reckoning time. The interesting bit about this is, which I didn't know, that Indian civil calendar is very different from Gregorian calendar. The year is completely different, and all government official communication has that year. I could technically sign my checks with that year and it would be considered valid. So I was interested in this sort of like collective thing, but obviously a committee doesn't feel that. Committee feels like someone is going to tell me what to do. So then I arrived at the idea of being a collective, so that when I present this work, it can offer a chance for viewers to actually participate. So the voicemails were obviously not contributed, they were like created, but presented as our research material. But perhaps in future, if someone sends a voicemail, it would be really interesting to make a calendar through that.
Yeah, I think that's such a tangible way to get people to engage with this speculative project of yours. Yeah,
found it really helpful after the first few rounds of getting incredulous looks at like, why?
Cool. I don't know if anyone else has any last questions. Looks like there's one more question from Woodrow. Are you able to read it? I can read it too. Yeah. Someone is going to win and others lose. Are there more equitable approaches that maybe don't center on colonized ways of thinking or a colonizer mindset?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that as in a Hindu calendar, for example, you have like an auspicious day or a non-auspicious day. Like it's religious and astrological, but it's also like belief systems. So again, like that's unequal ways of looking at time, that certain time is good for me to buy this and certain time is not. So I think that, I want to dig into the question that, do you think that some of the calendars that I presented continued reflecting colonized thinking, or I'm wondering what you mean.
I wonder if there's a way for us to invite him to speak. Again, we're kind of new to Airmeet, so we're figuring it out as we go. I don't know how to invite someone to speak.
Yeah, but yeah, I think the idea is that with the collective, the idea is that we involve, I am able to involve at this point more people who speak different languages and people who are from different cultures, who have different experiences of time.
I figured I can see if I can invite him.
Okay.
And if you don't want to speak, you don't need to either. But cool, they're able to add him.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
This was an excellent presentation, and I don't want to take too much time here, but it was just so fascinating and elucidated so many thoughts and notions, because at first I was a little confused in terms of kind of the premise of the talk. But as you kind of went through those examples, which really kind of brought to life in terms of, when we talk about, what's a solution, and today when we talk about technology, what's actually being adopted in terms of the decision making around that. So that's what my question was kind of around. So equity and making those sorts of, being more equitable and making those decisions around, what's going to be used, what's going to be adopted, because as I kind of articulated in the chat there, in essence, someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. So, that whole notion of, who has the power, that's what gets kind of adopted and moved forward, even though there may be more appropriate and better solutions available. And it was interesting because I think in your narrative, there was one calendar in particular, there were some points there that it's like, wow, this should be the calendar that we're looking at today, right? But, unfortunately, it didn't service those that were in power. So, it wasn't used or adopted. So those are just my thoughts. But thank you so much for that very beautiful and lightning presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think you're right, because that is but I think what is more important is that even though I may not be in power, I don't think I really knew that there were these options that existed for me to choose from. So I think at this point, this is opening the doors for these options. But it would be a longer journey from there to actually make sure that we choose something that works for us.
And it looks like there are a couple of more questions. Kalyani, if you want to maybe answer them in the chat, and also after J. Paul and Sophia speak, we'll have a little bit of time for some of those virtual table conversations to keep them going. But yeah, again, thank you so much. That was fascinating. I really enjoyed that.